On the evening of February 23, 2019, a young woman named Jassy Correia left a party with her friends. They had enjoyed themselves and departed in a car, but Jassy stayed behind to catch another ride home. Unfortunately, it seems she got into the wrong car by mistake, leading to a dispute with the driver. This argument caught the attention of a nearby man. Shortly after, Jassy left with this man, and that was the last time she was seen alive. 5 days later, police stopped a car displaying suspicious signs. What they discovered inside would haunt them forever. Jassy Correia had been eagerly anticipating her 23rd birthday celebration at a popular entertainment venue in Boston. The night, meant to be filled with joy and laughter, took a tragic turn when Jassy never made it back home. Her alarming disappearance quickly became a major news story, covered extensively by numerous American TV channels. Jassy Correia had a life story far from a fairy tale. A year before these events, she had suffered a violent attack from the father of her daughter Gabriela, named Miguel Castro. Despite her efforts to leave him, Castro's aggression escalated, resulting in a severe beating. This incident led Jassy to seek police intervention, which culminated in Castro's conviction and a 4-year prison sentence. Professionally, Jassy was a dedicated waitress at Del Frisco's, a renowned restaurant in Boston. Her passions included dancing and photography, and she cherished every moment spent with her family, friends, and especially her daughter. She loved outings to the park with Gabriela, creating memories now tinged with sadness. On the evening of February 23, 2019, Jassy, dressed in a new orange jumpsuit, left her 2-year-old daughter with family to celebrate her birthday. The chosen venue was a vibrant nightclub in Boston's theater district on Warren Street. According to a friend, the night was spent joyfully dancing and enjoying champagne. After the club closed, Jassy and 2 friends emerged into the night, but they parted ways, leaving Jassy alone. That was the last time she was seen. Attempts to contact her were futile as her phone went straight to voicemail. For 2 agonizing days, there was no news of Jassy. Her worried family had no idea of her whereabouts since that fateful Sunday morning. On February 26, her father, Jassy Correia, along with a friend, approached the police to report Jassy's mysterious disappearance. The police launched a full-scale investigation, beginning with tracing her steps post-nightclub. Flyers were distributed across the city, imploring the public for any information. Despite interviewing her friends who were with her that night, the investigation hit a roadblock. None knew where she had gone after leaving the venue. Their farewell that night was their last interaction with Jassy. In their meticulous investigation into Jassy Correia's disappearance, the police scrutinized witness accounts and analyzed CCTV footage from both the nightclub and the surrounding streets. A critical piece of footage from Tront Street, captured at 2:14 a.m., revealed Jassy outside the nightclub, engaging with several individuals. After leaving the club, the video showed a visibly inebriated Jassy mistakenly entering an Uber she hadn't ordered, leading to a heated argument with the driver, who subsequently forced her out of the vehicle. The situation escalated as Jassy continued to argue with the Uber driver. It was then that an unknown man approached her, seemingly offering assistance. The footage captured a disturbing interaction. The man holding onto Jassy's hands appeared to be restraining her, despite her attempts to leave. The CCTV then recorded the chilling moment Jassy was coerced into leaving the area with this stranger. The gravity of the situation became apparent. Jassy had unknowingly encountered a predator. Further video evidence showed a haunting scene. Jassy, in an attempt to lighten the mood, climbed onto the man's back. He then carried her to his vehicle and they drove off together, disappearing from the camera's view merely 14 minutes later. Faced with these harrowing images, the police were tasked with unraveling numerous unanswered questions. The identity of this mysterious man and his intentions were paramount. The pressing question remained: where had he taken Jassy? The investigation intensified as the police sought to piece together the events of that fateful night, hoping to uncover the truth behind Jassy's disappearance. A breakthrough in Jassy Correia's case came swiftly. As the police identified the man seen with Jassy Correia, they found him to be 32-year-old Louis Coleman. Coming from a well-regarded family and reportedly holding a master's degree in physics, Coleman had no prior run-ins with the law. Interestingly, police records showed no vehicle registered to Coleman. However, it was discovered that his mother, a resident of California, owned a red 2016 Buick, the same type of car seen in the CCTV footage. Coleman's residence was located in Providence, Rhode Island, approximately 50 miles from the nightclub in Boston where Jassy was last seen. When the police arrived at Coleman's home in Providence, they found it empty. Surveillance cameras in and around his apartment complex provided grim confirmation of the investigators' and Jassy's family's worst fears. The journey from the nightclub to Coleman's apartment typically took an hour. However, the timeline of events indicated that Coleman must have made a stop along the way, as he only reached his apartment around 4:15 a.m. on Sunday, roughly 2 hours after he was seen leaving with Jassy. Intriguingly, the following day, Coleman sent an email to his colleagues, citing illness as the reason for his absence and stating his intention to return in a few days. "Hey all, just giving everyone a heads up that I'm still out sick. I'll be back in a few days," he wrote. This communication raised suspicions that Coleman was buying time to conceal evidence of the crime, a theory that gained traction as investigators pieced together his actions over the subsequent 2 days. The police investigation into Jassy Correia's disappearance unearthed a series of chilling CCTV footage, shedding light on the tragic events following her encounter with Louis Coleman. Special Agent Thomas Zukowski described a key piece of footage showing Coleman carrying a motionless woman with long hair and orange pants, believed to be Jassy, into his apartment building around 4:27 a.m. This raised immediate concern, as Jassy appeared either unconscious or worse. On February 26, the day Jassy's father reported her missing, Coleman was spotted at a Walmart purchasing items that later seemed incriminating: Tyvek suits, duct tape, candles, electrical tape, a mask, surgical gloves, safety goggles, a respirator, bleach, and more. His actions suggested a desperate attempt to cover up a heinous act. The next day, while Jassy's loved ones distributed missing person flyers, Coleman returned to Walmart, this time buying a large suitcase and a canister. Later that evening, CCTV footage captured him entering his apartment with the new suitcase and then, in the early hours of February 28th, wheeling it out to his car. The footage was harrowing, showing Coleman struggling to load the heavy suitcase into the trunk. U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts Andrew Lelling later confirmed that since the morning of February 24th, Jassy Correia had not left Coleman's apartment. The police, armed with a search warrant, found incriminating items in Coleman's apartment and a nearby dumpster, including stained jeans, hooded coveralls, and items purchased from Walmart. On February 28th, when the police stopped Coleman near Wilmington, Delaware, they made a grim discovery in the trunk of his car. Jassy's body, concealed in a sofa cushion cover and a black trash bag inside the suitcase. Forensic examination revealed she had suffered strangulation and blunt force trauma, and there was evidence linking Coleman to the crime through DNA analysis. The tragedy of Jassy's untimely death was compounded by the loss experienced by her 2-year-old daughter. Boston authorities, visiting the Correia family, pledged to seek justice for Jassy. Amidst this, some social media users questioned Jassy's decision to be out alone at night. However, Suffolk District Attorney Rachel Rollins emphasized that the focus should not be on victim blaming, but rather on addressing the underlying issues of violence against women. Rollins urged a shift in societal conversation, calling for men to take responsibility and actively combat violence against women in all spheres of life. Louis Coleman faced grave charges of kidnapping, resulting in death, a crime carrying the potential for either the death penalty or life imprisonment. However, in November 2019, prosecutors decided against seeking the death penalty, setting the stage for a trial steeped in complex evidence and emotional testimony. During the trial, prosecutors laid out a compelling case, presenting a range of evidence, including a disturbing video of Coleman dragging Jassy Correia's body into his Providence apartment. The prosecution also highlighted Coleman's unsettling online searches post-abduction, which included queries about fitting a body into a suitcase and extracting a tooth. Coleman's defense team, led by attorney David Hoos, challenged the relevance of this evidence to the kidnapping charge, arguing that the focus should be on the specific elements of the kidnapping allegation rather than Coleman's actions following Correia's death. The trial revealed a nuanced narrative of the events leading up to Jassy's tragic demise, with prosecutors establishing that Coleman was present in the same nightclub. As Jassy and her friends were at the nightclub, Coleman interacted with another woman, not Jassy, even exchanging phone numbers and texts with her. However, the situation took a grim turn when, according to prosecutors, Coleman misled Jassy into believing he would drive her to her friend's apartment, ultimately leading to her death. In stark contrast, the defense portrayed Jassy as the aggressor, suggesting that an impromptu fight between her and Coleman led to the fatal altercation. They argued that this was not a premeditated crime, despite the prosecution's assertion that Coleman, significantly larger than Jassy, was unlikely to be overpowered by her. Adding complexity to the defense's narrative were toxicology reports showing the presence of alcohol and prohibited substances in Jassy's system. Despite these claims, the jury found Coleman guilty of kidnapping resulting in death in June 2022. In October 2022, the court sentenced 36-year-old Louis Coleman to life imprisonment without parole and ordered him to pay approximately $660,000 in compensation to Jassy's family. First Assistant United States Attorney Joshua Levy, in a poignant statement, underscored the irreversible harm and suffering inflicted by Coleman on Jassy and her family. Levy emphasized Coleman's lack of remorse and his elaborate efforts to conceal his heinous crime. The sentence, while unable to alleviate the enduring pain of Jassy's family, marked a conclusion to a case that had deeply impacted the community. The unanswered question of Coleman's intentions with Jassy's body lingered, a haunting reminder of the tragedy that befell a young mother and the shadow it cast on those she left behind. On the morning of Saturday, March 9, 2019, a solemn gathering filled St. Peter's Parish in Dorchester, uniting in grief to bid farewell to Jassy Correia. The air was heavy with sorrow as family, friends, and members of the community assembled to honor her memory. Some attendees chose to wear all white as a symbol of mourning, while others donned buttons, shirts, and sweatshirts adorned with Jassy's image and the poignant slogan, "Justice for Jassy." During the ceremony, Jassy's cousin and best friend, Makar DeAndrea, shared heartfelt words expressing both the deep sadness and the firm belief that Jassy's untimely passing was not meaningless. "We may not understand why, but God knows. I trust with all my heart that her death was not in vain," DeAndrea conveyed with emotion. Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, in his eulogy, reflected on the tragedy and committed to striving for a safer world for women. Young women should be able to celebrate their birthdays without fear and return safely to their children and families, Walsh asserted, empathizing with the unimaginable pain Jassy's family endured. Jassy's father, Jassy Correia, addressed the congregation of over 200 people, expressing gratitude for the overwhelming support from the city and the tireless efforts of law enforcement across 3 states. Among the attendees was Jassy's mother, who had not seen her daughter in 20 years and had traveled from Portugal, embodying the far-reaching impact of the tragedy. The church was filled to capacity, with many people standing along the back wall, a testament to the love and respect held for Jassy. In his final tribute, Jassy Correia's words echoed with both sorrow and love. "Rest in paradise, my dear Jassy. Rest in peace." The community's response to Jassy Correia's tragic death was profound, highlighting the need for greater awareness and action against violence. In the days and weeks following her funeral, vigils and memorials were held throughout Boston, with people from all walks of life coming together to honor her memory and stand in solidarity with her family. The case became a rallying point for discussions on women's safety and the need for stronger protective measures. Advocates and local leaders called for increased resources for domestic violence prevention and victim support services. Jassy's story was seen as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by women, particularly when alone at night. Organizations dedicated to combating violence against women used the incident to amplify their message, advocating for systemic changes to prevent such tragedies in the future. In response to the community's outcry, city officials announced plans to implement additional safety measures in nightlife areas, including improved lighting and increased police presence. There were also calls for better training for ride-sharing drivers and stricter regulations to ensure passenger safety. The tragedy prompted a broader conversation about the responsibility of businesses and the community in safeguarding individuals, especially women, in public spaces. Jassy's family, while devastated by their loss, expressed a deep commitment to ensuring that her death would lead to positive change. They established a foundation in her name, aimed at supporting survivors of violence and promoting awareness around the issues Jassy faced. The foundation's efforts included educational programs, community outreach, and partnerships with local shelters and support groups. Jassy's mother, despite the long years of separation, became actively involved, finding a sense of purpose in helping others through her daughter's legacy. The legal proceedings continued to draw significant public attention. Lewis Coleman's appeal processes and subsequent hearings were closely followed by the media and the community. The case highlighted critical issues within the criminal justice system, including the handling of domestic violence cases and the treatment of defendants in high-profile trials. Throughout this period, Jassy's family and friends remained a visible presence, attending court sessions and participating in public events. They became advocates for change, sharing Jassy's story to raise awareness about the dangers women face and the importance of community vigilance. Their resilience and advocacy were met with widespread support, as many recognized the courage it took to turn their grief into a force for good. In the years following the trial, Jassy's story continued to resonate. It served as a cautionary tale and a call to action, inspiring initiatives aimed at protecting vulnerable individuals. Educational institutions incorporated discussions about personal safety and consent into their programs, and public campaigns were launched to encourage bystander intervention and support for those in distress. Jassy Correia's legacy, though born from tragedy, became a symbol of hope and change. Her story underscored the importance of community solidarity, the need for systemic reform, and the power of advocacy in preventing violence and supporting survivors. As the community healed, they carried forward the lessons learned from Jassy's life and death, determined to create a safer and more compassionate society. The impact of Jassy Correia's tragic death extended beyond her immediate community, sparking a nationwide dialogue on issues of safety, gender violence, and justice. As media coverage of the case spread, so did public awareness and concern. National organizations focused on women's rights and safety rallied to support Jassy's family and used her story as a platform to advocate for broader systemic changes. In response to the outpouring of support and calls for action, lawmakers began to take notice. Proposals for new legislation aimed at improving safety for women in public spaces gained traction. This included measures to enhance security protocols in ride-sharing services, such as mandatory background checks for drivers, panic buttons for passengers, and more stringent verification processes. The aim was to create safer environments for women and ensure that incidents like Jassy's could be prevented in the future. The foundation established in Jassy's memory, named the Jassy Correia Foundation for Women's Safety, became a focal point for these efforts. The foundation's mission was to support survivors of violence, advocate for stronger protective laws, and promote educational programs on safety and empowerment. Through fundraising events, partnerships with local businesses, and public awareness campaigns, the foundation worked tirelessly to keep Jassy's memory alive and prevent similar tragedies. Jassy's story also highlighted the critical role of mental health support in the aftermath of trauma. The foundation collaborated with mental health professionals to offer counseling services to victims of violence and their families, recognizing the profound emotional and psychological impact such experiences can have. They provided resources and workshops on coping strategies, resilience building, and community healing, helping individuals and families navigate their grief and recovery. The annual Justice for Jassy March became a significant event, drawing participants from across the state and beyond. It served as a powerful reminder of the ongoing fight against gender-based violence and the importance of community solidarity. Each year, the march brought together survivors, advocates, law enforcement, and policymakers, fostering a space for dialogue, education, and action. The march not only honored Jassy's memory, but also advocated for continued vigilance and proactive measures to protect women. Educational institutions played a crucial role in perpetuating Jassy's legacy. Schools and universities incorporated discussions about consent, healthy relationships, and bystander intervention into their curricula. Programs aimed at empowering young women and educating young men about respect and responsibility became more widespread. These efforts were seen as essential steps in changing societal attitudes and preventing violence before it occurs. Jessy's family, despite their profound loss, became prominent advocates for change. They shared their story widely, speaking at events, participating in interviews, and working closely with the foundation. Their courage and dedication inspired many, highlighting the power of personal stories in driving social change. They emphasized that Jessy's death, while a devastating loss, should not be in vain, and that her story could be a catalyst for a safer and more just society. The case also brought to light the importance of law enforcement training in handling cases of gender violence and the need for a compassionate, victim-centered approach. Police departments across the region reviewed their policies and procedures, implementing training programs to better equip officers in dealing with such sensitive situations. This included training on trauma-informed practices, cultural competence, and the importance of maintaining a supportive and non-judgmental stance towards victims. As the years passed, Jessy's legacy continued to influence and inspire. Her story became a touchstone for discussions about safety, justice, and the need for societal change. The Foundation's work expanded, reaching more communities and providing crucial support to those affected by violence. Jassy Correia, through her memory and the actions of those she left behind, became a symbol of resilience, hope, and the enduring fight for a world where women can live free from fear and violence. My dear child, the community's presence and solidarity served as a powerful reminder of Jassy's life and the collective mourning of a life taken too soon. Parents can be very intrusive, arrogant, and demanding. Sometimes, their demands bring benefits, but other times, they can be dangerous. Brett Ryan found himself in such a situation. He grew up in a prosperous, large Canadian family with his parents, Bill and Susan, and his 3 brothers. Managing a big family, especially with 4 boys, might seem exhausting, but Bill and Susan made it work. Bill, besides his prestigious job at the Toronto Star, had many hobbies, including sports, yoga, and psychology. Susan was incredibly hardworking, keeping their huge house in a prestigious Toronto area in perfect condition without any help from gardeners or craftsmen. Neighbors often admired their blooming garden through the fence. Brett was not the family favorite, as Suzanne loved all her children equally. However, it might have seemed that Brett was scolded the least due to his obedience. He had an uncanny ability to navigate out of any situation, even when the evidence pointed to his involvement. This skill made him popular at school, with many wanting to be his friend or at least greet him. Like his older brothers, Brett went to university after high school. He always wanted to surpass them, so he started a business offering painting services for houses and fences. Initially, things went well and Susan was proud of him, holding him up as an example. However, Brett eventually dropped out of university to focus on his business, while his brothers, Christopher and Leland, graduated and secured jobs in their respective fields. Brett's confidence waned. Christopher worked for the Toronto Transit Commission, and Leland became a family artist and designer. They moved out, but Brett, to save money on rent, stayed with his parents and younger brother, who attended a school for gifted children. As the years passed, Brett became more desperate due to his mounting debts and inability to pay them off. By 2007, Brett Ryan had developed depression. At 26 years old, his debt had surpassed $60,000. Despite being considered intelligent, he struggled to use his mind productively and masked his struggles with a constant smile, volunteering, and helping others. No one could see the deep darkness within him. The breaking point came on October 28, 2007. Brett had no orders for house painting or any other work. Fall was a slow season, and winter promised even fewer opportunities. Desperate, Brett donned old clothes, a hat, a long sweater from his older brother, and a comically long scarf his mother had knitted. He wrapped the scarf around his face, leaving only a narrow slit for his eyes, and headed to a bank on the outskirts of his neighborhood. Clutching a thick folder and limping slightly on his right foot, he waited his turn. When he approached the teller, he quietly informed her that he had a gun and demanded all the money from the cash register, threatening to shoot her if she didn't comply. With trembling hands, the teller handed him the cash. Brett quietly walked out to avoid attracting attention and then ran once he was outside. He counted the stolen money, a little over $1,000. Realizing he would need to rob about 60 banks to pay off his debts, he knew this was not a sustainable solution. For the first few days, Brett feared the police would catch him. He avoided home, telling his mother he had a job in a neighboring town and spent nights in his car. Periodically, he checked his house for police surveillance but saw none, believing he was safe. The first robbery was followed by a second, third, and fourth. Each time, Brett changed clothes, never reusing the old ones. He bought second-hand clothes or found them in the trash, burning them after each crime. He also purchased a fake beard from a costume shop. The bank employees always noticed his beard and testified that the attacker was a bearded man. Toronto newspapers began writing about the bearded robber. Finally, their patience paid off. Brett left his house, got into his car, and later exited near a bank, wearing another strange disguise. He entered the branch and lingered for a while, but when he exited, the police were waiting to finally handcuff him, announcing that the much-discussed bearded robber had been caught. Brett was under investigation for 7 months and charged with robbery with a firearm. Interestingly, despite having a gun permit, he always robbed the banks empty-handed, not even carrying a kitchen knife. In total, he faced 19 counts and was sent to prison. From there, Brett and his family filed multiple appeals, which yielded results. Only 8 of the 19 counts were upheld. Brett didn't stop there. As soon as he had the opportunity to apply for parole, he took it. In his petition, Brett cited severe depression caused by 2 failed relationships and a large amount of debt as reasons for his crimes. He emphasized that he committed the robberies without weapons, never intending to harm anyone. His remarks were considered, but he had to undergo sessions with a psychologist to secure early release. These sessions had a positive effect on Brett. While in prison, he didn't communicate with his family, but he made efforts to rebuild those relationships. His positive changes were noticed by the commissioners, and on November 24, 2010, Brett was released. However, freedom turned out to be more challenging than Brett anticipated. He was now branded as Brett the bank robber and Brett the ex-con. This reputation made it impossible for him to find employment, and even those who initially hired him for house painting services refused once they recognized him. The same neighbors who once praised Susan's garden now spread unpleasant rumors. The Ryan family hastily sold their house and moved to Scarborough, where Susan started a new garden. Brett found a low-paying job with a trading company and relied on his parents for financial support to rebuild his education. Brett continued seeing a psychologist who advised him not to break his connection with his family. This advice proved beneficial. Despite these efforts, Brett's financial situation remained dire. In September 2011, a fortunate event occurred. He met Kristen Baxter. Kristen was an incredible woman with her own apartment overlooking the sea. She was athletic, maintaining a fit physique, and most importantly, she didn't care about Brett's past. They traveled together, including a trip to Australia, and Brett's parents were hopeful that Kristen would help him find stability. Brett's life seemed to improve, but then his father died, which was a severe shock. His depression returned, leading him to frequent his psychologist more often. He also had to spend a lot of time with his mother and help her financially, further straining his resources. Despite these challenges, Brett was deeply in love with Kristen and wanted to take their relationship to the next level. He had some savings and discussed with his mother his desire to propose to Kristen. Susan, understanding his intentions, gave him money to buy a ring. Although Kristen didn't need an expensive gift, Brett bought a gold ring with a huge diamond, wanting to make the proposal memorable. Kristen said yes, and they began planning their wedding. However, the expenses terrified Brett, making him realize the need for a stable job. He found an engineering job opening at a large technology company online, submitted his resume, and was accepted after a successful interview. Ecstatic, Brett shared the news with his fiancée and his mother, asking her for money once again to buy an expensive suit for work. His mother, supportive as always, did not refuse her son. After buying the suit, Brett received a call from the company informing him that they had to re-sign their offer because their security service had uncovered his criminal past. This news hit Brett like a bolt of lightning, plunging his mood into despair. He felt defeated and questioned why he should continue with the endless cycle of interviews and rejections when no one would hire a former criminal, even one who had tried to reform. Most importantly, he wondered why he should keep pursuing further education. Brett decided it was better to use the money his mother and older brothers had given him for his university education on his wedding to Kristen instead. He found himself back in the situation he had recently escaped from. He didn't tell his family that he had dropped out of university, nor did he reveal to his counselor or anyone that he had been turned down for the engineering job. Instead, he wore a shirt and tie and went back to painting houses, changing into his work clothes en route. He told his family he was working in an office and frequently posted photos online of supposed office events, all downloaded from the internet. He also pretended his phone was ringing with urgent work issues whenever he was around his loved ones, skillfully concealing the truth. By September 2016, after a 5-year relationship with Kristen, Brett planned their wedding. He even rented an expensive restaurant, costing $100 per guest. The entire Ryan family was thrilled, believing Brett had finally turned his life around with a prestigious job, a fancy apartment, and a stunning bride. However, they were unaware that Brett's web of lies had become unsustainable. With the wedding only a month away, the event required significant investment. Brett repeatedly borrowed money from his mother, and when she could no longer assist, demanded she find a higher-paying job. He also planned a bachelor party in August, inviting all his friends and brothers. As the pressure mounted, Brett decided to confide in his counselor. He admitted that he had been lying for a year about working as an engineer for a technology company. The psychologist was disheartened by Brett's relapse and advised him to come clean to his mother. Brett pondered this advice, struggling with the decision and putting off the confession. Eventually, Brett did confess to his mother. She was devastated, having spent so long bragging about her wonderful son. She insisted that Brett come clean to Kristen, warning him that his brothers were already aware of the situation and were on her side. Brett, however, found it impossible to face Kristen with the truth. With the wedding less than a month away, he was acutely aware that it wouldn't happen as she knew. Despite knowing it would be better for Kristen to learn the truth sooner, Brett chose to remain silent, fearing the inevitable scandal if his mother told her. Every time Kristen's phone rang, Brett flinched, dreading that it might be his mother calling her. He was haunted by the thought of his mother spilling the truth, which would lead to a scandal. As his anxiety grew, Brett concocted a plan to silence his mother permanently. His conviction for robbery had prohibited him from using firearms, so he decided to use a crossbow, a relatively silent weapon. One of his late father's hobbies had been crossbow shooting, and Brett was proficient at it, although he knew his father would never have anticipated such a use of the skill. Brett purchased a crossbow and arrows from a sporting goods store and hid them behind construction debris in Susan's garage. He also devised an elaborate alibi. He tied a spoon to a fan and set the fan on a timer, which would activate the fan and move the spoon across his computer keyboard to post pre-written comments on YouTube. From the outside, it would appear as though Brett had spent the day at home, watching videos and commenting. On the morning of August 25th, Brett, dressed in disguising clothes that obscured his face, left the house through the back door to avoid security cameras and took a train to his parents' home. His intention was to remove any obstacles to his and Kristen's future. Susan was taken aback by his unexpected visit. Although she had been feeling unwell, Brett persisted in persuading her not to reveal anything to Kristen. When Susan refused, Brett's anger boiled over. Seeing the madness in his eyes, Susan warned him that she had already called Christopher, who was on his way. Panicking, Brett rushed to the garage, retrieved the crossbow, but his rage and adrenaline made him incapable of aiming properly. Instead, he bludgeoned his mother with the butt of the crossbow, and to ensure she was dead, tightened a rope around her neck and covered her body with plastic bags. After hiding the crossbow in the bushes, Brett waited for his brother to arrive. When Christopher showed up and began calling for his mother or brother, Brett shot him in the neck from behind, killing him within minutes. Brett's next target was the youngest brother, Alexander, who, as it turned out, Susan had managed to call as well. Alexander was also shot in the neck. But the arrow either didn't penetrate deeply enough or missed vital arteries, so Alexander didn't die immediately. Instead, he began to scream and call for help. Meanwhile, Leland was asleep in his room on the second floor, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding in the garage and garden, or that it was his own brother behind the violence. The commotion woke Leland, and when he came downstairs, he found Brett trying to strangle Alexander. A violent struggle ensued between Leland and Brett. As Leland gained the upper hand and managed to push Brett away, he ran to the neighbors to call the police. Left with no escape and realizing he had irrevocably ruined his life, Brett took out his phone and wrote a letter to Kristen, asking for her forgiveness. When the police arrived, they found a bloody Brett sitting next to his equally bloody but still alive brother Alexander, who would later die in the hospital. Brett himself requested to be handcuffed and taken to the station, where he confessed to the crimes. He also revealed the location of his mother's body hidden under plastic in the garage, though it was too late to save her. At the police station and later in court, Brett admitted that he had not intended to kill Susan. His original plan was to scare her, Christopher, and Alexander. However, he did plan to kill that day, and if the witnesses had not arrived, they would have been among the victims. Brett tried to justify his actions by citing his depressive state, but it did little to mitigate his sentence. Despite his full confession and cooperation with the investigation, the judge sentenced him to 3 life sentences, 1 for each murder, with the possibility of parole in 2041. Leland, the sole survivor of the horrific events, has chosen not to speak to reporters but is known throughout Toronto for his role in surviving the carnage. As the investigation continued, the media coverage of Brett Ryan's crimes made headlines across Toronto. The shocking nature of the murders, combined with Brett's previously respectable public image, captured the city's attention. Many were left grappling with the complexity of Brett's character, once a seemingly successful individual, now revealed as a murderer with a dark past. Brett's trial was a media spectacle. His defense attorney tried to emphasize his mental state, arguing that his severe depression had clouded his judgment and led him down a path of irreversible violence. Despite these arguments, the prosecution maintained that Brett's premeditation and attempts to cover his tracks demonstrated a deliberate intent to kill. The courtroom was filled with tension as the details of the murders were laid bare. Throughout the trial, Brett's remaining family was left to deal with the aftermath. Leland, having witnessed the horror and lost his brothers, became a figure of resilience and endurance. Despite his traumatic experiences, he chose to remain out of the media spotlight, focusing on his own healing process. His bravery and testimony played a crucial role in the conviction, but the psychological scars would take years to heal. Susan's funeral was attended by many, a somber reminder of the vibrant woman she once was. The community came together to support the Ryan family, who now faced not only their personal loss, but also the burden of their son's actions. In the years following the trial, Brett's life in prison became a series of legal battles and personal reflection. He underwent various psychological evaluations and participated in therapy sessions, trying to make sense of his actions and seek some form of redemption. His letters to Kristen and attempts to reconnect with his family from behind bars highlighted his ongoing struggle with guilt and regret. Kristen, devastated by the betrayal and the loss of her dreams for a future with Brett, found herself navigating her own path of healing. The relationship had ended abruptly, and she was left to rebuild her life in the wake of the emotional turmoil. As Brett approaches his first eligibility for parole in 2041, the question remains whether he has truly changed. His case continues to spark debate about the nature of redemption and a capacity for change within the justice system. The scars of his crimes are not just on the lives he directly affected, but also on the broader community that witnessed his downfall. The Ryan family's story serves as a stark reminder of how hidden struggles can sometimes erupt into devastating violence. It underscores the importance of mental health awareness and a need for support systems to help those who are struggling before they reach a breaking point. Why do people commit crimes? Human nature is intricate and multifaceted, and every action has its reasons. This time, we will not discuss individuals with mental health issues and their tendencies toward violence, nor will we cover military personnel whose job involves eliminating enemies. Instead, we'll focus on other primary motives for life-threatening acts: material gain, revenge, exceeding the limits of necessary defense, and accidental incidents. English isn't my first language, so I might not be perfect at it. Thank you for your patience and understanding as I try my best to communicate with you. Feel free to ask if anything isn't clear. Most crimes occur domestically during conflicts and disputes, often when everything seems fine. However, these acts of violence are not causes, but consequences of human spirit degradation, leaving a lasting mark. On the morning of January 12, 2019, it was reported that 65-year-old Michael Redlick had passed away. Known as a former NBA executive with the Memphis Grizzlies and a beloved professor at the University of Central Florida, it was initially believed he died from a heart attack. However, upon the arrival of emergency services, it became clear that Mr. Redlick died from a stab wound to the chest. Various theories were considered, including self-inflicted harm. Later, forensic experts determined that the incident was a criminal act. The perpetrator was soon identified as his beloved wife. By June 2022, she stood trial. Yet, this story is not straightforward. She did not admit to the intentional crime and frequently changed her testimony. The legal battle between the prosecution and defense was long and heated, ultimately leading to an unexpected verdict. What really happened in Winter Park, Florida? Who is the true victim, and could this tragedy have been prevented? Let's explore together. Sitting in the defendant's chair is 46-year-old Danielle Redlick. Petite and slim, her chestnut hair has visibly grayed, possibly due to spending 3 years in custody or from the stress and turmoil she's endured. Until 2019, she was an ordinary working American woman, a mother of 2 wonderful children, and a specialist in multimedia communications. She wasn't particularly well known, but after the crime against her husband, her name frequently appeared in the media. This is what happens when the dirty laundry of seemingly respectable spouses is aired publicly. Danielle was born in 1976 in Florida. After some time, her family moved to Cleveland, Ohio. Her childhood was typical. She grew up kind, well-mannered, and creative. As the eldest child in her family, her appreciation for beauty intensified as she matured. She enrolled at Valencia College, earning an Associate of Arts degree, and later attended the psychology department at Baldwin Wallace University. In 1996, Danielle's mother, Caitlin Aquino, remarried, but the marriage lasted only 2 years before Caitlin passed away from cancer. It turns out she had been battling breast cancer for a long time. Thanks to her husband's comprehensive insurance, she received high-quality medical care, which was the primary reason for legally formalizing their marriage. Unfortunately, the treatment ultimately did not yield the desired result. After his wife's death, Michael not only became a widower, but also took on the role of a true father to her children. Finding it difficult to raise them alone, he asked for help from Caitlin's eldest daughter, Danielle. At that time, 22-year-old Danielle was living independently but responded to the request. Thus, after Caitlin's death, Danielle, her brother, sister, and stepfather, Michael Redlick, all ended up under one roof. Yes, you heard right. The very same Michael who later became Danielle's husband and was fatally attacked on a winter evening in 2019. Initially, their relationship was built on friendship. Danielle took care of the younger kids and worked part-time at a bar at night, while Michael was building his career in professional sports, involved in player recruitment. He grew very attached to the children, who became like his own, and felt comfortable with Danielle. Over time, she saw him as a dependable support despite the 20-year age difference. Their interaction was easy and natural. Gradually, the man and woman grew closer. Neither age nor status bothered them. However, Danielle initially kept their relationship hidden from her family. With his new partner, Michael felt younger and more energetic, and Danielle felt loved and protected. Using his connections, he easily found her a new job in an advertising agency. Besides having a high income, he devoted all his free time to the family. Overall, things were going well for both of them. Eventually, Mr. Redlick received a tempting job offer. He was invited to become the vice president of corporate sales for the Memphis Grizzlies basketball team. However, the new job required moving to another state. Without hesitation, he asked Danielle to come with him, but she hesitated. Danielle didn't want to change her familiar lifestyle, and she was still studying, so she declined. Yet their relationship continued long distance, and the lovers often saw each other. One day, he showed her the house he had bought for them, impressing her. The cottage was located in a picturesque area by the Mississippi River. The neighborhood was quiet and cozy. Ultimately, Danielle decided to move and live together. To ensure she had no doubts, he found her an interesting job in the radio industry. Later, Danielle recalled that at first, everything was perfect. However, Michael's job eventually brought changes. Many years later, during the trial against Danielle, her 15-year-old daughter, Jaden, testified. She spoke of how Michael was an excellent father who did a lot for his family. Along with her 8-year-old brother, Sawyer, they attended one of the best schools, hoping to pursue careers in sports. Thanks to their dad's encouragement and support in enrolling them in sports programs. Jaden was close to her father, which she couldn't say about her mother, whom she saw as hysterical, manipulative, and toxic at times. The young lady believed that Danielle instigated all the conflicts at home, while Michael tried to keep the family in peace. But was it really as Jaden perceived it? What caused the discord in what seemed like a happy and united family? Mr. Redlick's new position came with increased responsibility and stress, and he had a difficult relationship with the management. This took a toll on him, making him very stressed and tired. Eventually, to relax and unwind, Michael turned to alcohol and beverages. Over time, this became a daily occurrence. He would often stay out late, returning home intoxicated and angry. The tension in the house was palpable. Danielle tried to support her husband, understanding his condition. After talking to her, it seemed he would calm down and promise to stop, but his promises were short-lived. One time, Michael missed a dinner they had planned together. This was not the first occurrence, but this time they had specifically arranged to spend the evening together. Danielle was very upset and stated that if he couldn't make time for her, he should have warned her so she could make other plans. Heading towards the door, she made an ill-timed joke which struck a nerve with Michael. He stood in the doorway and hit her across the face. The slap was so forceful that she staggered back. She then noticed that her clothes and the floor were splattered with blood. In shock, she recoiled from her husband, who began crying and apologizing, clearly distressed. Michael tried to make amends immediately. He took his wife to a familiar sports doctor and explained what had happened. The doctor examined the unfortunate victim, provided first aid, and then recommended seeing a dentist and a plastic surgeon, as the injuries were quite severe. Danielle even had a front tooth knocked out. The next day, Michael arranged a memorable dinner and was very attentive and caring. Undoubtedly, his wife forgave him and did not report the incident. Given the state's strict domestic violence laws, Mrs. Redlick felt sympathy for her husband and decided not to cause him any further trouble. This was not the first warning sign, however. Danielle had already encountered similar behavior while they were living together in Cleveland. At a concert, Danielle chatted with an ex-boyfriend, which made Michael jealous. On their way home, he dropped a few sarcastic comments about it. When Danielle responded in kind, he unexpectedly hit her, then immediately apologized, noting that he did it because she had hurt his feelings. Danielle forgave her partner, blaming herself as well, and over time, the incident was forgotten. After all, things happen in relationships. In 2003, the Redlicks welcomed their first child, a daughter named Jaden. A year later, the couple decided to legalize their relationship. It was a bright period in their lives, and everything seemed to be going well. However, Michael still faced challenges at work. The management changed, and he couldn't get the promotion he had hoped for. 7 years later, the family grew with the addition of a son named Sawyer. The parents were fully engaged in raising their children, but Michael's job continued to be a source of tension, leading him to start drinking again. This led to more frequent conflicts. During one argument, Michael grabbed Danielle by the throat and pinned her against the wall, which terrified her. This time, she couldn't tolerate the rough behavior and packed up, taking the children and moving in with her relatives. It's worth noting that her relatives had not initially approved of the marriage, but had eventually come to terms with it. Michael repeatedly visited her, apologizing and asking her to come back home. After some time, their relationship was restored. The following years were unstable. The Redlicks moved several times. Michael was offered a job in California, where they lived for about 5 years. This period was hardly successful, as Michael struggled with his issues and continued to indulge in drinking. There came a time when both spouses were unemployed and lived off their savings. In 2014, another move was on the horizon, this time to Indiana. However, the prospects were promising. To find a new home and settle matters, Michael went ahead first. Danielle stayed in California with the children to sell their old property and belongings. The constant moving had become exhausting, making it difficult for the children to adapt to rapidly changing environments. The whole process took a year, during which time the family's financial situation improved. However, the marital relationship underwent changes. The distance and infrequent meetings affected them. Danielle and Michael grew distant and barely communicated. With the spouses finally reunited, they faced new issues. At one point, Danielle began to suspect her husband of infidelity. He had become unusually cold and distant, and the former passion had faded. Michael found the strength to confess that his age and health were to blame. He had been embarrassed to mention this earlier, fearing he would lose his younger wife. Danielle was grateful for his honesty and supported him as before. After trying numerous medications, the couple decided to undergo a course of hormone injections. Their struggles were significant, but they kept trying to find ways to make their relationship work. Unfortunately, the accumulation of stress, misunderstandings, and unresolved conflicts ultimately led to the tragic events of January 2019. Testosterone injections helped Michael rejuvenate physically and mentally. He seemed to become younger, regaining his former energy and vigor. However, this also brought an increase in his aggressiveness. One evening, while watching a movie together, Michael fell asleep. Danielle went upstairs to rest. The next morning, he entered the bathroom while she was brushing her teeth and struck her on the head. He justified his action by saying she had not woken him up the evening before. She responded that she was tired of this and was leaving, which only angered him further. He began to choke her, and poor Danielle could not defend herself and began to lose consciousness. At one moment, she felt like she was dying. After some time, Mrs. Redlake opened her eyes and saw her husband standing over her, scared and confused, begging for forgiveness. All Danielle could do was silently crawl away. After this incident, they continued to live in the same house and raise their children together. But their relationship fundamentally changed. Apparently, a point of no return had been reached. Michael began to drink more frequently, and conflicts in the home increased, even over trivial matters. The number of times Michael's discontent escalated into physical aggression increased. Despite her dissatisfaction with the situation and resentment towards her husband, Danielle did not leave him. She continued to love him deeply. The ongoing situation also affected Danielle. She became nervous and irritable, withdrawing into herself. To distract herself, she took up photography. Nevertheless, their family still appeared respectable, as most of their disagreements did not extend beyond the home. By the end of 2014, the Redlicks finally settled in Florida. This time, Michael decided to change his career path. Tired of the constant stress, he took a position as Director of External Affairs and Partnership Programs at the University of Central Florida and began teaching. Although his income was less than what he made in the NBA, the job brought him enjoyment and stability. Initially, the family rented a home, but after a year, they purchased their own property in the quaint area of Winter Park. Their family home was impressive, designed in a Mediterranean style with a huge square footage. Danielle favored the attic floor, which served as her retreat. She often spent nights there, especially when Michael had bouts of anger. Testosterone injections rejuvenated him and restored their intimate life. But even during intimate moments, he could be harsh. Their relationship remained tense and unstable. Against this backdrop, Danielle developed an alcohol dependency. While Michael worked and supported the family, Danielle managed the household and children, increasingly withdrawing into herself. The numerous disputes eventually led to the couple separating in 2016. Despite this, Michael continued to see the children and support them financially, paying the bills. By this time, Danielle had found a job at a school. New acquaintances helped her out of her depression, and her responsibilities restored her independence. However, she still continued to see Michael, who could come and go as he pleased. During one of these visits, another argument ensued, after which Danielle ended up in the hospital with a concussion. She kept silent again and did not tell the truth about what happened, fearing it would cause problems for her husband. However, this time, Michael took her silence for granted. During questioning, Danielle confessed that in early October 2016, something extraordinary happened. Her husband had tried to run her over with his car. She was saved only because she managed to jump into the bushes. After this, Danielle went to the police department. However, when detectives began to inquire in detail about the incident, she changed her mind and left, for the same reason as always. Later, the couple reconciled and moved back in together. However, this turned out to be a fateful decision for both of them. At around 9:00 a.m. on January 12, 2019, a 911 call was made. On the other end of the line, a woman introduced herself as Danielle Redlick and reported that her husband, Michael, had died from a heart attack. When the rescue service arrived at the scene and entered the house, they immediately noticed a strong smell of cleaning agent at the entrance to the living room. The team encountered a bucket filled with pink-colored water. Beyond this, a scene from a thriller unfolded. A man lay on the floor in a pool of blood, lifeless. It was clear that the unfortunate man had not died from a heart attack, as his wife had claimed, but from a penetrating knife wound. The woman who made the call was also found with cuts on her wrists. Paramedics provided first aid before taking her to the hospital. Following them, the police began their investigation. When investigators examined the scene, they were certain that Michael Redlick's life had been taken. It was unlikely that he could have inflicted such a fatal injury on himself. Later forensic analysis confirmed that the blood traces in the home belonged to the deceased. The pink liquid in the bucket at the entrance was nothing but diluted blood. Someone, possibly the homeowner herself, had tried to erase a trail leading from the bedroom to the living room, indicating that the body had been dragged. Despite the cleaning efforts, not all evidence was destroyed. Blood spatter was found in the corners of the room and on the walls. Moreover, a large knife lay at the entrance to the kitchen, and 3 smaller knives were found in the sink. Detectives were eager to speak with Danielle. Once doctors reported that her injuries were not life-threatening, she was questioned. During the interview, she repeatedly changed her statements. Initially, she claimed to have thought her husband died of heart disease. Later, she stated that he had taken his own life following an argument. However, experts refuted her claims. Such a wound is difficult to self-inflict, and individuals intending to end their life usually choose a simpler and less painful method. The autopsy showed that Michael died from blood loss. With timely medical help, his life could have been saved. Additionally, he had a lacerated left eye. Toxicological tests also revealed a high level of alcohol in his system. The investigation revealed that a few days before the incident, there was an argument between the spouses, witnessed by their elder daughter. Michael had been drinking and burst into the bathroom, where Danielle was hiding. However, their daughter Jaden intervened, taking the bottle away from him. After this, Danielle left the house and returned once her husband had fallen asleep. According to the girl, it was the first time she had seen such a burst of anger in her father, for which he later apologized multiple times. She still maintained that he was a loving and caring father while asserting that her mother was the instigator of conflicts. The next day, the couple reconciled. Michael invited his wife and children to a soccer game. However, according to witnesses, Danielle appeared upset and was virtually non-communicative. That evening, the parents dropped their kids off at a friend's house for a sleepover and were left alone. Later, Danielle stopped by McDonald's and returned home around 10:30 p.m. Upon entering the house, she found her husband drunk. During dinner, Danielle received a message from an unknown man. Michael saw it, bit off a piece of his hamburger, and spit it at his wife. He then attacked her, attempting to strangle her. In self-defense, Danielle grabbed the first thing she could, a knife, and stabbed him in the chest. He fell and began to bleed profusely. According to the defendant, she immediately called emergency services, but mistakenly dialed the wrong number. Her actions were later corroborated during the investigation. In a state of shock, she lay down next to Michael and fell asleep until morning. At least, that's how Danielle explained the 11 hours of inactivity when asked by the prosecution why she'd lied during the emergency call and subsequent questioning. Mrs. Redlick explained that she was afraid and concerned that no one would believe she acted in self-defense. There were reasons for this fear. Shortly before the incident, she had been involved in a scuffle with friends. When police arrived at the scene, she resisted, attempting to bite one of them. She also refused to cooperate with the investigation, leading to charges of disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. Danielle had been on probation for about a year. It was also established that the cuts on her wrists were self-inflicted. She claimed she had tried to end her life due to the emotional turmoil, but the nature of the injuries suggested otherwise. Otherwise, they were superficial and not life-threatening, so her claims were not believed. Investigators also discovered that Danielle was far from a role model. After learning of Michael's infidelities, she signed up on a dating site, interacted with men, and retaliated by being unfaithful. Her profile status declared she was single and not in a relationship. An analysis of countless messages between Michael and Danielle showed that she still loved her husband. Once she learned of his affairs, she felt betrayed and disillusioned. She also discovered that Michael planned to leave her despite appearing repentant and desiring to mend their relationship. Danielle explained that it was hard for her to understand and accept her husband's actions. She was heartbroken, having dedicated the best years of her life to a man who did not appreciate her. The prosecution used this information against her, arguing that the crime was premeditated and committed in a fit of rage because she could not forgive his infidelity and the impending divorce. Like Mr. Redlick, she was prone to fits of anger, confirmed by neighbors who noted that the couple often argued loudly, escalating into physical altercations. However, Michael and Danielle were described differently by those who knew them. Michael was portrayed positively as kind and helpful, while Danielle was seen as quarrelsome. Video evidence was presented showing Danielle acting irrationally and attacking her husband. Friends and Michael's brother agreed with this portrayal, with one recalling calling her crazy but assuring that all would be well as long as steak knives were hidden. Danielle's lawyer argued that her actions were dictated by self-defense and a history of emotional and physical abuse. Relatives, often witnesses to their arguments, confirmed that Michael was rough and emotionally abusive. They also knew he frequently physically abused and humiliated her, although never in their presence. Some family members reported that Danielle was nervous and quick-tempered, a trait that only emerged after years of marriage. Leah, like many teenagers, loved using social media. However, it's hard to tell who's really on the other side of the screen, whether they're a friend or someone pretending to be nice, but is actually dangerous. Leah was born on March 21, 2001, in Clarksville, Tennessee. She had an older brother named Quan, who was 3 years older. After their parents, Lena and Philip, decided to split up, Lena wanted a safer, quieter place for her kids away from the busy city. She moved Leah and Quan to a small town called Spring Valley in Illinois, where they had family. This meant the kids could grow up with their cousins. Spring Valley is a small, friendly town by the Illinois River. In 2002, it had just about 5,000 people and hasn't grown much since. There aren't big malls or skyscrapers, but the people there are close and support each other. Lena got a job as a cook in a nursing home and worked there for over 15 years to make sure her kids had what they needed. Since Lena was often busy, Quan took on the role of looking after Leah. They became very close, almost like best friends. Leah also spent a lot of time with her cousin Gia, and they looked so much alike that people sometimes thought they were twins. Later, Lena had 2 more children, a girl named Gia and a boy named Noah. Although Spring Valley was a great place for families, one problem was that there wasn't much for teenagers to do. This lack of activities meant that teenagers like Leah often turned to the internet and social media for entertainment and to connect with others. Leah was particularly active online, where she enjoyed chatting with friends and meeting new people. But this digital world can sometimes be risky, especially for young people. As Leah grew older, her mother Lena worried about the time Leah spent online. She tried to encourage her daughter to engage in more local activities like sports or clubs, but options were limited in Spring Valley. Despite these concerns, Lena trusted Leah to manage her own social interactions, hoping that the strong family values she instilled would guide her safely through the complexities of online relationships. Quan, acting as both brother and mentor, also kept a watchful eye on Leah. He often talked with her about the importance of being cautious online, reminding her that people might not always be who they seem. These conversations were a mix of brotherly advice and friendly chats, strengthening their bond even further. Meanwhile, Leah's relationship with her cousin Gia provided her with a close confidant with whom she could share her online experiences and teenage dilemmas. Their friendship offered Leah a sense of security and belonging, reinforcing the idea that she wasn't alone in navigating the challenges of adolescence. As Leah and her family navigated these aspects of teenage life, the tight-knit community of Spring Valley also played a crucial role. Neighbors looked out for one another's kids, and local events, though small in scale, provided some much-needed social outlets. However, the lure of the online world remained a persistent and pervasive presence in Leah's life, illustrating the modern struggle between connecting digitally and maintaining real-world relationships in a small-town setting. Leah was a typical girl who loved to sing, dance, play with her siblings, and set up photo shoots. As smartphones and social media became more popular among teenagers, Leah spent many hours online. By the time she was around 13 years old in 2014, she started to actively post a variety of content on her social media pages. She shared everything from details about her personal life and invitations to meet up, to her love for her family and admiration for her mum, who she thought was the best in the world. Sometimes Leah would ask for advice or just share her thoughts online. As she grew up, she experienced the usual emotional ups and downs of moving from childhood to adulthood. There were times when Leah felt unsure or really needed someone to talk to. Although her mum, Lena, and other family members interacted with her posts, Leah often wanted more attention from other social media users. With not much to do in Spring Valley, her interest in boys started to grow, and she used social media like a digital diary, updating her thoughts and activities multiple times a day. Through her posts, anyone could see how she was changing and what she was thinking during her teenage years. She loved her family deeply, but sometimes she felt a deep sense of boredom and looked online for someone to talk to. She openly expressed her feelings of loneliness and her desire for more friends and attention. Social media was just a part of her life, but it revealed her worries and thoughts at that time. Leah was in high school and had recently started dating a boy named Nicholas Nelson. They spent a lot of time together and seemed very happy. Leah didn't really like school much, and in the fall of 2017, she planned to graduate early by passing exams in a special program. She was empathetic and wanted to become a nurse, showing that despite her youth, she had big dreams. On January 23, 2018, the Bradley family celebrated Lena's birthday with a house full of friends and family. The evening was filled with joy, cake, music, and the warmth of loved ones. Little did Lena know, less than a day later, her life would change dramatically. After the party ended at 10 p.m., Leah said goodnight to her mum and went to take a shower. Lena usually got up just before 7 a.m., prepared breakfast, and got the younger kids ready for school, expecting her oldest daughter to be up by then. But that morning, Leah was nowhere to be found. Her bedroom was empty. At first, Lena wasn't too worried, thinking Leah might have gone for her usual morning coffee run to the nearby gas station. However, as the morning progressed without any sign of Leah, Lena's initial calm transformed into concern. She checked Leah's usual spots around the house and even called her cell phone, but there was no answer. Lena's worry deepened when she discovered Leah's phone left behind on her bed. Something highly unusual, as Leah always took her phone with her, especially if she stepped out. Realizing that this was out of the ordinary, Lena decided to call a few of Leah's friends to see if they had heard from her. None of them had seen Leah that morning or the previous night after the party. Lena then reached out to Nicholas, Leah's boyfriend, who also hadn't seen her since the party and was starting to get worried himself. With no clues about her whereabouts, Lena contacted the local police to report her daughter missing. The police arrived and began to gather information, asking about Leah's friends, her online activities, and any recent changes in her behavior. They took note of the digital footprint she left behind, realizing that her social media might provide some clues to her usual hangouts or any new acquaintances. As the search for Leah intensified, the small community of Spring Valley rallied around the Bradley family. Neighbors, classmates, and local volunteers organized search parties, combing through nearby areas and places Leah liked to visit. Flyers with her photo were distributed, and her story quickly spread on social media, leading to a wider community alert. The police, meanwhile, began to delve into the more troubling aspects of Leah's social media presence. They discovered conversations with individuals her family didn't know, revealing a layer of her life that was unknown to even her closest relatives. It became clear that despite the closeness of their family and the vigilance of her brother Kwan, Leah had managed to build relationships online that were invisible to those around her. This revelation led to a dual approach in the investigation, continuing the physical search for Leah while also digging deeper into her online interactions. Investigators worked to trace the digital conversations back to real-world identities, hoping to uncover any leads that might explain her sudden disappearance. As each hour passed, the community's hope mingled with anxiety, and Lena held on to the belief that the strong values she had instilled in her daughter would eventually bring her home safe. Meanwhile, the police worked tirelessly, knowing that the first 48 hours were crucial in missing person cases. Everyone hoped for a breakthrough, aware that every moment mattered in the search for Leah. had been interacting with individuals who were part of a larger, potentially criminal network. These contacts weren't just casual or romantic, they seemed to be involved in illicit activities that Leah may have unknowingly become tangled up with. Fiona revealed that Leah had mentioned meeting someone new who promised her opportunities that seemed too good to be true. This new information sent shockwaves through the investigation. The police, realizing the potential gravity of the situation, stepped up their efforts. They started to trace Leah's online communications with these questionable contacts, hoping to track down the network and understand the nature of their interactions with her. Simultaneously, community efforts to find Leah continued unabated. The town's residents, together with local businesses, organized a candlelight vigil, hoping for her safe return. Social media campaigns were raped up, with hashtags and shared posts reaching far beyond the local area, catching the attention of regional news outlets. The police managed to track down some of the individuals Leah had communicated with. Through interrogations, they learned that she had been promised a job that required travel, which might explain her sudden and unexplained departure. However, there was no solid proof that she had left willingly or that she was safe. The fear remained that she had been coerced or misled into a dangerous situation. As the search continued, the community held on to hope, inspired by the strength and resilience of Lena and her family. Lena spent countless hours with the police, providing them with everything they might need to find her daughter. She also spoke at community gatherings, urging young people to be cautious about whom they trust online. The investigation revealed a complex web of interactions that extended beyond simple dating or friendship connections. It became evident that Leah had been drawn into a circle that was much riskier than anyone had suspected. The police focused on tracking down the dark vehicle seen in the video from the coffee stop, which they now believed might be the key to uncovering Leah's whereabouts. Every lead was followed, every piece of surveillance footage reviewed, and every interview conducted with the hope of finding Leah safe and bringing her home. The community, united in their concern and effort, waited anxiously for any news that could lead to her rescue, holding on to hope amidst the fear and uncertainty. As days turned into weeks, the urgency to find Leah did not wane. The community's resolve only strengthened, rallying support from neighboring towns and even states. Flyers became a common sight far beyond Spring Valley, and the story of Leah's disappearance reached a national audience through various social media platforms and news outlets. The breakthrough came when investigators focusing on the dark vehicle managed to enhance the video footage. They identified a distinctive sticker on the back window and a partial license plate. This led them to a small town about 40 miles away from Spring Valley. The vehicle was registered to a man known to have a criminal history, including charges related to cybercrimes and potential trafficking. Armed with this information, law enforcement coordinated a raid on the suspect's residence. The operation was tense, with local and state police involved, prepared for any scenario. As they breached the house, they found several individuals inside, but there was no sign of Leah. However, the search of the premises uncovered a wealth of digital evidence, including computers and mobile devices, loaded with communications and data related to the network Leah had unwittingly become involved with. Meanwhile, the community organized a massive search operation along a possible route Leah might have taken or been taken along. Volunteers, police and drones covered areas of dense woodland and remote fields. During one of these searches, a volunteer found a piece of clothing that was positively identified as belonging to Leah. This discovery narrowed the search area and intensified the efforts. The digital evidence gathered from the raid allowed police to arrest and interrogate several more individuals connected to the suspect. Under pressure, one of the suspects disclosed a location where Leah was supposedly held briefly before being moved. This tip led authorities to an abandoned farmhouse in a secluded area. With hearts racing and hope hanging by a thread, the search team approached the farmhouse. Lena was there, accompanied by family and police, waiting anxiously as officers entered the building. After what felt like an eternity, officers emerged with good news. Leah was found alive. She was weak and frightened, but otherwise unharmed. The reunion with her mother was emotional, captured by police body cameras, showing the relief and tears as Lena embraced her daughter tightly, promising never to let go. In the aftermath, the community celebrated Leah's safe return, but the ordeal had left its mark. Leah had been misled by someone she trusted online, illustrating the dangers lurking behind digital screens. Law enforcement continued to dismantle the network Leah had stumbled into, making several more arrests. Leah's story sparked widespread discussions about internet safety, leading to workshops and educational programs both locally and nationally. For Lena and Leah, the focus was on recovery and advocacy, using their experience to help others recognize the risks of online interactions. The ordeal brought the community closer together, with a renewed commitment to looking out for one another, both in the real world and online. Leah slowly adjusted back to her life, her experience a stark reminder of the fragility of safety in the digital age, but also a testament to the strength and resilience of a community determined to protect its own. There were ads that popped up offering to meet men for money. A high school student named Leah was curious about this business. She found out that some men paid women to meet them. Leah posted ads about herself on adult websites, which led to many messages from men on her phone. Her mom, Lena, felt bad because she didn't expect her daughter to do this. But Leah's brother, Kwan, thought differently. He believed their mom was usually strict, but also gave them freedom. Leah might not have understood the seriousness of meeting strangers for money. She might have thought she'd get paid just for spending time with older men. She was exploring life with the innocence of youth and didn't realize the dangers online. Law enforcement knew that many young people in Spring Valley spent a lot of time online, but their parents didn't understand the risks. So, they asked the FBI for help to track Leah's movements when she disappeared. They found out she was in a vehicle. They looked at surveillance footage but couldn't see license plates clearly. They came up with a plan to use a patrol car with a camera to identify vehicles that passed by frequently. They found a red pickup truck and a black Jeep that stopped appearing suddenly. They focused on these vehicles and found that the black Jeep was linked to a place Leah had been to. At the same time, detectives checked Leah's online activities. They found out she messaged a 26-year-old named Gerald or Jay. He said he stopped talking to her when he found out her true age. This happened on January 24th at 6 a.m. Leah had asked Jay to meet her at an IHOP restaurant, but she quickly took back the invitation, saying it was meant for someone else. Jay responded with a simple smiley face. Then, at 6:40 a.m., Leah sent a distressing message to Jay saying, "I'm dying." When Lena, Leah's mum, found out that Jay was the last person Leah had contacted, she was furious and accused him of harming her daughter. But Jay had an alibi. He said he was at home all night playing video games with a female friend who turned out to be Leah's cousin, Gia. As the investigation continued, the focus shifted back to the black Jeep that was seen in surveillance footage heading towards Putnam County, where Leah's phone signal disappeared. Authorities believed this vehicle was crucial to uncovering Leah's fate. Sadly, the urgency of the situation heightened when 3 days after Leah's disappearance, the sheriff's office in Putnam County received a call reporting the discovery of a young woman's body. A pedestrian had found Leah's remains in a ditch beside a road in Granville Township. The police chief recognized that the young woman matched Leah's description, so he contacted authorities in Spring Valley. Leah's body was found in a rural area covered in snow, with cornfields nearby. Her body showed signs of struggle, indicating she had fought fiercely before her death. When the lead detective arrived at the Bradley family home to deliver the tragic news, Lena sensed something was wrong, even before she was told. DeQuan, Leah's brother, was devastated by the news and fainted upon hearing it. The entire community was shaken by Leah's death, and parents became fearful for their children's safety. The investigation team focused on the black Jeep seen in the surveillance video. They identified the vehicle as a certain model year of a Jeep Wrangler and used databases to find owners in the area. Eventually, they located a black Jeep belonging to Richard Henderson, who had been in Spring Valley on the day of Leah's disappearance. Henderson was seen on gas station surveillance footage near the Bradley residence, waiting for a call from a friend named Leah. As investigators delved deeper into Richard Henderson's background, they noticed inconsistencies in his story and behavior. Despite initially claiming innocence, Henderson's demeanor betrayed moments of hesitation and discomfort under scrutiny. Detectives became increasingly suspicious, especially when Henderson stumbled over details about his supposed friend named Leah. Upon further interrogation, Henderson's facade began to crack. He eventually admitted to having met Leah on the day of her disappearance. He confessed to arranging a meeting with her, intending to engage in illicit activities. However, Henderson insisted that their encounter was consensual and denied any involvement in Leah's death. Despite Henderson's claims, the evidence continued to mount against him. Forensic analysis revealed traces of Leah's DNA in Henderson's vehicle, linking him directly to the crime scene. Additionally, witness testimony and surveillance footage corroborated key aspects of the investigation, further implicating Henderson in Leah's tragic demise. As the case unfolded, the community grappled with shock and disbelief at the horrifying turn of events. Leah's untimely death served as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in seemingly ordinary interactions, particularly in the realm of online communication. In the aftermath of Leah's murder, law enforcement agencies intensified efforts to combat online exploitation and protect vulnerable individuals, especially minors, from falling prey to predators like Henderson. Community outreach programs and educational initiatives aim to raise awareness about the risks associated with online interactions, empowering individuals to recognize and report suspicious behavior. Despite the devastating loss of Leah, her memory lived on as a catalyst for positive change, inspiring collective action to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Through perseverance and dedication, authorities sought justice for Leah and closure for her grieving loved ones, ensuring that her legacy would endure as a beacon of resilience and hope in the face of adversity. As the investigation unfolded, more details emerged about the tragic events leading to Leah's death. Investigators delved deeper into Richard Henderson's background, uncovering troubling aspects of his past that shed light on his violent tendencies. It was revealed that Henderson had a history of aggression and had been involved in previous altercations, raising concerns about his capacity for violence. Furthermore, Leah's friends and family shared insights into her life, painting a picture of a vibrant and caring young woman whose potential was tragically cut short. They remembered her infectious laughter, her love for animals, and her dreams of pursuing a career in medicine. Leah's untimely death left a void in their lives that could never be filled. As the legal proceedings against Henderson progressed, the community rallied together to seek justice for Leah. Advocates and activists called for stricter laws to protect vulnerable individuals from predators like Henderson, and to ensure that no family would have to endure the pain of losing a loved one to senseless violence. Despite the passage of time, the memory of Leah continued to resonate with those who knew her. Her story served as a sobering reminder of the dangers that lurk in the world and the importance of remaining vigilant against threats to our safety and well-being. In the aftermath of Leah's death, her family established a foundation in her name, dedicated to raising awareness about online safety and supporting victims of violence. Through their efforts, they hope to honor Leah's memory and prevent others from suffering a similar fate. As the years went by, Leah's legacy lived on, inspiring positive change and serving as a beacon of hope for a brighter, safer future. Though she may have been taken from this world too soon, Leah's spirit endured, shining brightly in the hearts of those who loved her.